everybody. Welcome back to another episode Home with Olympus Live. We are in the home stretch of the year, everyone. We've made it to December. We've made it through 2021. We just got some presents left, and then we are on to 2022. Cannot believe it's been almost a year of these episodes, and I'm super excited to be celebrating another episode with you tonight. If you have not heard or are not following along, we are currently in the middle of our countdown to Christmas. So if you check out our Learn Center, and we will link that in the comments, all month long, we will be doing some tips and tricks for your best holiday and winter themed photography. So definitely follow along. We'll be unveiling new tips and new videos and new ideas all month long leading into our nice holiday break. And yeah, so let's talk about a little bit of the technical side tonight. As always, our episodes are recorded. You will be able to watch this again at a later date. I apologize if my audio is messed up tonight. We have been having some crazy technical situations, so I'm using a weird microphone, and hopefully our audio is okay. So let me know in the comment section if you can hear us all right. I'll be working in the background to try to make sure everything sounds great for you guys. Yeah, and we, as always, will have time for Q&A at the end of this session. So if you have a very important question you want to get answered, make sure you ask that at the end of our session, and we'll do a nice live Q&A. But for now, I would like to kick off this cold month of December, which is why I've got my nice beanie on and my nice Olympus jacket, with our presentation on finding winter landscapes with Olympus Explorer Tyler Glass. So let's get him on. Where are you at, Tyler? Hey.
What's up?
How's it going? I can hear you now.
Good.
So that's great.
Yeah. Let's go.
For all of you guys in the comment section, I couldn't hear Tyler for a while. It was all my fault. And Sharon Dempsey says that we sound good. So thank you, Sharon. It's nice to see you're still watching the show. All right. We got people from New York tonight. Russia, which is probably very cold there, and you probably need your nice stocking cap as well. Germany, 43 degrees in Minneapolis right now. So Tyler, where are you from?
I am born and raised and from Louisville, Kentucky.
Nice.
And that's where I am.
like the way you pronounced that. I would have said it wrong. Now I feel like I'm...
Oh, yeah. No, don't worry about it. Just do your thing. Pronounce it how you want. Yeah, I say Louisville, but Louisville.
Nice.
Yeah, whatever works.
Is it cold there right now?
It's not bad. Let me check the temps. It's like 60 something probably. Not bad.
That's
it's
nice.
pretty good compared to where I usually am. So
yeah,
probably better than Russia.
Yeah, probably better Russia. Yeah, Russia. Our friend in the comments from Russia, tell us how cold it is there so we know. We got some people from Wales and Wyoming, and I saw some Scotland too. Northern California. So Marianne in Northern California. I'm also in Northern California, so I feel really ridiculous in my big, thick Olympus jacket and my hoodie. But when you see Tyler's photos, this will all start to make sense with my outfit. But I am sweating in here because I think it's 63 degrees here in California today. All right. Ooh, Tito's here from Spain. Hi, Tito. Tito is my counterpart in Spain. Hi. All right. So Tyler, what are you going to talk about tonight?
So tonight I'm going to talk about winter landscape photography, why I do it, how I go about planning for a trip, in the field, kind of my process once I get there, and just kind of all the experiences, and just trying to explain the best way, like how to prep and plan for a winter shoot, because it can get kind of crazy out there. So that's what I'm going to try and do.
Is that why you shoot Olympus? Because we're weather sealed?
That's why, yeah. Weather seal. Yeah, that helps. That helps, yeah.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to bring up your slides, and let's go ahead and take some look at your photography. I'll add those too. And I'm going to get out of the way. I'll let you take it over. And like I said, everyone, welcome Tyler. Be nice to Tyler in the comments section. Help each other out as we go along, and we will do the Q&A at the end. Okay, so Tyler's not going to be answering questions while he goes, but we will get them all answered at the end. So we'll see you on the other side, Tyler.
Thanks, Mishala. All right. First of all, thank you everyone for tuning in. It means a lot to me. There's nothing I love more than being able to share my art, but also be able to share the experiences behind my art, and info on, what my process is as far as like, planning for shoots, editing, stuff like that. I really appreciate Olympus for having me on and letting me do this. It is an absolute honor. I'm going to start out actually by talking about this photo. This is the header photo, and it was actually taken in Glen Allen, Alaska, or the Glen Allen Highway. This is literally about 20 feet from a major highway there. This is sunrise, and it was it lasted about 2 hours. And that was because you can see there's like a low-lying fog behind those trees that diffused the sun and gave us about 2 straight hours of this light. So we were kind of driving up and down this road trying to photograph it as much as we could and document it. But we were only able to be outside of the car for about 10 minutes at a time because it was about negative 30 degrees Fahrenheit before wind chill. So we weren't able to take any like layers of clothing off or anything. We were having to get in the car every 10 minutes to warm up, get back out and start shooting again. So it was actually a really intense kind of morning for us. My buddy who I was photographing with, we got into the car after he had his glove off for about 15 straight minutes, and he passed out from the pain in the passenger seat. So it's just kind of just a small little taste of why I love winter photography, but why I have to have a very healthy respect for winter conditions when planning and photographing winter landscapes. So let's get into it. First of all, a little bit about me. Like I said, I am born and raised in Louisville, Kentucky. This is home for me. I'm still based here, actually. I've have 6 years of landscape photography experience, and I've been on the Olympus team for 2 seasons now. So love the Olympus team. I love the gear, and I can't talk highly enough about a brand or a company that I've worked with over the past 6 years. And speaking of which, my first camera was actually the Olympus OMD EM10 Mark II. That wasn't anything related to me being an Olympus Explorer at all. I actually bought the camera because it was very aesthetically pleasing. It had a very retro look. I knew nothing about photography, knew nothing about cameras, but I loved the look of this camera. So I was like, yeah, I'm going to buy that one. I do specialize in landscape and adventure photography. Adventure is basically the same thing, but it's more or less putting a human in the photo and kind of showing like exploration or scale by putting like a human element in a photo. So that's kind of like my bread and butter. But I also do commercial work for Eddie Bauer, Logitech, New Belgium Brewing. Yeah, stuff like that. That's a little bit about me. How did I get here? How did I get into photography? So in my college years, I spent a lot of time out in Colorado. We did a lot of climbing out there, climbing 14ers such as Sneffels, Maroon Peak, Lone Eagle Peak, Longs Peak. And I kind of found this passion for the outdoors because I had always been an athlete growing up. I played soccer in college. And so once college was over, I kind of had to find a new identity because when you grow up an athlete, that's kind of who you are. And you can ask anyone who grows up playing soccer for 20 years, like you're a soccer player. So I needed to find a new passion, something to kind of that I could put my time and energy and love into. And the outdoors was that thing. I just didn't know how I could put more into it. So like I would be up, we'd climb Maroon Peak and I'd be up there with an iPad mini, taking a photo, turning 180 degrees, taking a photo like a total dad. And that's kind of how I started in photography, was taking photos on an iPad mini. And I'm up there, I'm like, I have to do better than this because this doesn't capture, what I'm seeing here. So I went home one year after Colorado. I put a camera on a credit card and I never looked back. And that's kind of how I got where I am today. And I've been a full-time photographer now for 3 years. Been on the Olympus team for 2 seasons, and it's been an I'm super thankful for what I get to do every day. So my go-to camera setup is the EM1 Mark III. Michelle, I think we have the old presentation here. Actually, now I'm going to stop it real quick. Let me slide through real quick. So yeah, this is the old, hopefully Michelle can hear me.
Hey,
I
pulled your slides up. 1 sec. See, hey, live show. You never know what's going to happen.
Yeah, I don't know how that got in there.
Yeah. Do you have your other slides open in your browser?
I can, yes, they're in a different browser, but yeah.
Okay. So open it in this browser. Sorry, I'm going to start echoing, guys. See, it's been a very exciting day on the live streaming side of things, everyone. So bear with us for just 1 sec. You know, technology is always exciting, and you guys always get to see me at my highest level of panic. So,
All right, I've got
so
it
I'm going to
open.
remove. You've got it open. So you have to stop sharing your first one.
Okay. Got it.
There you go. Thanks, everyone.
So
you guys are doing
you think?
awesome.
Yeah.
Let's see. I'm going to, scroll through it and see if it's updated.
It's not.
Woo. All right. I think I have the slides. So
Let me try and save it or something real quick. I'm not sure. Or even if you're able to present it, and I can tell you when to.
Yep. I'm looking for it right now. We'll see what we can track down. I believe in us.
Cool.
Open the slides. Let's see what you got. No, that's everyone that's hanging out. You can answer the questions for a sec, Tyler. Somebody was asking what kind of gloves you wear, and I'm sure you have a special type of glove for.
Hefstra is the brand. I have a couple of different gloves from there. Some of them are a little bit thinner, which makes it good for photographing, and then some of them are to literally keep my hands from falling off. They're called Hefstra gloves, Hefstra. Really good brand of gloves.
Nice. Do you have are they the kind that have the fingers that you can take off, you know? Or are these like the super, so you don't lose your fingers?
I've got the thin ones that I don't need to take the fingertips off of them. And then I have the other ones that are just like massive mittens that have like 3 inches of insulation in them.
All right. I think I've gotten to your slide deck. So I'm just going to double check this. All right. So I see you on the slide deck. I don't know why it's not showing your updated slides, but I'm going to try to share from here so that we can do this.
Aaron Long from Louisville used to work at Murphy's Camera. That's literally where I bought my very first camera, was Murphy's Camera.
See, this all works out.
Fairbanks, Alaska, -6 is relatively warm. Good luck with that, man. Or yeah. We almost sent it up to Fairbanks when I was taking that photo to try and photograph the Northern Lights that year.
That's awesome. Share. I'm trying to share slides. It's not letting me share your slides.
Hand warmers.
I found it.
Got it. Sweet.
I think so.
Emily, hand warmers. Absolutely. That's on a slide, and I will tell you all about hand warmers.
I one time photographed, I'm waiting for this to load, but one time I photographed the hot air balloons in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And that was the first time I used hand warmers, and I had them in every pocket in my jacket, my blouse. Because I thought New Mexico would be warm. At 5 a.m., New Mexico is not very warm. It's very beautiful, and the balloons are great, but that was a shocking surprise. All right.
Bob in Kentucky. I bought a camera from Chuck 3 weeks ago, man.
Oh. That's awesome. I like that all of these people. Oh, beautiful.
That's from
all right.
Chuck.
I'm adding your slides back in. So I think you were on this one, correct? What's in your bag?
The one behind it. My go-to setup.
Go-to camera setup. Got it. All right. I will try to listen for your cues. Everyone in the comment section and everyone viewing tonight, thank you. This is the first time that I've had to track something down like this, and I appreciate you guys all hanging out. It's been really awesome. Let's do this. We got this. I'm out of here.
Awesome. Thanks, Mashallah. All right. So back to where I was, trying to gather myself here and figure out where I was. Yes, I've been a photographer for 6 years, and this is where I am with Olympus. I love Olympus because they offer lightweight, compact products that have just absolutely insane technology and weatherproofing as well. Because I find myself in some really, really sticky conditions, which you will see here pretty shortly. And I need something that I don't want to have to put my camera away if it's lightly raining or snowing. I want to be able to push through that and be able to capture what's going on. So my go-to setup is my favorite body. I'll just go through each part. My favorite body is going to be the EM1 Mark III. This one is awesome because it is an absolute beast, but it's tiny. You get so many little pieces of technology that other camera brands haven't really caught up with yet, and they're literally compact in this little thing. And I'm a minimalist photographer, as in like I'm a huge gear junkie. I'll say that I'm a huge gear junkie. I love gear, but when I'm hiking 10, 15 miles, I don't want a bunch of gear in my backpack. So the lighter, the better, and the more compact, the better. So I always go with this one because it's one of the smaller cameras, but it has all of the best Olympus technology inside of it. Now, one of Olympus's newest lenses is actually the 8 to 25 millimeter flat 4 Pro. I don't know how I felt about this lens when I first read about it, but when I got it in my hands and started shooting with it, this is hands down my favorite lens I own now. I use it more than any other lens, and that's because, one, it's a wide angle lens. I'm a landscape photographer, so I like capturing the big picture, you know? So that's obviously, you know, where I start. And then like, what does this lens offer me in terms of versatility? This is one of the most versatile wide angle lenses on the market. I like being able to get the wide angle, but then I like to, you know, diversifying my portfolio from that day a little bit and being able to crop in on a little, you know, if I'm shooting a mountain range like the Teton range, well, I want to be able to just shoot Grand Teton itself right now. This lens will allow me to do both of that. Not to mention, it also allows me to put circular polarizers and ND filters on it as well, which is a huge plus for me, because if you've seen my work, I use polarizers and ND filters on about 99% of my shots. So that's, you know, it's a necessity for me to be able to do that. And then a tripod. A tripod is always going to be a part of my go-to setup. I used to be such a preacher about not liking tripods just because they were extra and I didn't want to deal with them. And I think it was because I was a little spoiled. Olympus's image stabilization within the body and the lens really spoiled me to where I could shoot with a 2-second shutter speed and it would come out crisp as ever. But, you know, with wind and everything, like tripods are your friends. They will up the quality of your work. So definitely need a tripod in my kit. Yeah, next, Michelle, if you can. Oh, she's on it. All right, what's in my bag? Totally. So I won't go through all of these. These are any of the lenses or bodies or anything larger accessory wise that'll be in my bag at any time. I won't have all of these in my bag because it would weigh about 100. Oh, that probably wouldn't be that heavy actually, but it would be a lot and I can't fit it. But the EM1 Mark III, obviously, EM1X is usually my backup camera because it has all of the technology that the EM1 Mark III has. It's just bigger. So normally if I want to go with a more compact setup, my backup camera is going to be the EM5 Mark III, which is a tiny, tiny camera. As far as lenses go, the first few lenses I have in my pack almost every time. The fisheye lens I'll put in if I have some sort of assumption that I might be in like more of a tight space, like a cave or something. Fisheye lenses offer really diverse photos for you, and they offer just a little more range than a normal wide angle lens. So I like having them with me in the off chance that I'm, you know, able to capture something in a much more tight area. And you'll see a shot like that in a few slides. And then the 2-time converter, I don't usually use that unless I know I'm going to be photographing wildlife. The 40 to 150 2.8 Pro is actually my go-to telephoto lens, and it usually gives me more than enough reach in landscape photography. So I usually don't need the converter unless I know I'm shooting wildlife, in which case it's amazing. And then, of course, drone, tripod, ND filters. Yeah. Michelle, next. Thank you. Why winter photography? I probably get asked this question. It's got to be one of the top 2 or 3 questions I get asked is why I put myself in these extreme cold environments all the time. And one simple answer is because most people won't. And I see that as an invitation to do it myself, because if someone else isn't willing to go capture this landscape in these spectacular conditions, but brutal, I want to be the one to go do it. You know, I want to be able to have this unique perspective that maybe that other people aren't going to go get that day. But winter photography also offers the opportunity to find new perspectives in familiar places. And a prime example of that is this photo right here. This is, if you don't know what this is, what you're looking at, this is called firefall. It happens in Yosemite National Park once a year. It happens 2 weeks out of the year in February, if it happens. So basically, if you look off to the right of your right, you'll see El Capitan and this little strip of light on it. That's actually a waterfall. It's called Horsetail Fall. And so what happens at firefall, and it only happens because of the light, the sun being so low, is that the light comes in between Cathedral Peak and El Capitan, and it squeezes on this. And what Horsetail Fall is a seasonal waterfall, which means it's only around during this time of year. It's not around in the summer, not really around in the fall, definitely not the spring. It's around like through March. So just this can only happen literally in one place on the planet, and it only happens in the winter. It's just one of those things where, like, you know, it just shows you kind of like how winter can offer new perspectives. But this doesn't even happen all the time. Where I went to capture this in 2020 and there wasn't enough snow to produce the waterfall, and it literally didn't happen. So you got the conditions of the light and everything, but there was no water to shine, and firefall literally didn't happen. But you know, you have to go through a lot more, because we had to do a big hike to be able to get up to this point in ice and snow. I mean, you really go through it to get through winter photography, and it stretches you mentally, physically, and creatively. It absolutely, I mean, I've been put in some pretty sticky situations in the winter, and there's a reason I have a healthy respect for it. It has made me a better person. It has made me more prone to getting cold. I am always hot now because I'm constantly find myself in cold places, and my body has to adapt to it. And in stretching myself mentally, physically, and creatively, I become a better person. I become a better photographer. Stretching yourself in these environments is amazing. But photographing in the winter it's just tougher. It's nothing like photographing in the summer or the fall where it's chill. You know, it's either like 90 degrees or 75 degrees. So I always, I'm always like, it's going to suck at first, but you're really going to learn something from this experience. So that's why I'm always not all photographers are like, yeah, let's go to Alaska or Fairbanks or Norway to photograph the Northern Lights. No, some people are like, let's go to Costa Rica. It's a lot more chill down there in December and January, a lot warmer. And that's okay too. But being able to go into these environments really makes you a better photographer. It's just a whole new challenge. Next slide, please. Thank you. All right, so planning for a winter shoot. I'm just going to show you a little bit step by step my process of not only picking a place in the winter, but picking a place in general to go to. And I normally pick a place 2 to 3 months in advance. Like I just bought tickets to Iceland for February. So 2 to 3 months in advance, sometimes just a couple weeks, depending on what projects are coming my way. So choosing a location normally starts with in winter conditions, what looks good in winter. Kentucky doesn't look great in winter. Everything's dead. All the leaves fall off of it. What looks good in winter are places like Iceland, Norway, Alaska, the Yukon. All of those places look fantastic because they're snow covered, they're ice covered, they offer new colors, and you don't just have a bunch of dead trees. So you have to figure out what will look good in the winter. And then I'll kind of get on social media, I'll scope some places out. We'll kind of, put our feelers out. What do we want to shoot? What feels good? And then I'm going to try and virtually scout a location by getting on both Google Maps and Google Earth. So Google Maps, I'll kind of use to just get a broad idea of what the space is like. But Google Earth, I can have 3D imaging right in front of me, and I can move and scale over, and I can look at let's do Grand Teton again, and I can literally move any angle I want to around Grand Teton and figure out what it would look like to photograph it from this angle. So you're able to get an idea of what your frames are before you even get in the field. That is largely important because, it's always good to have an idea of what you want to shoot before you get there, obviously. Okay, travel, and I'm going to take a drink real quick. Excuse me, transportation and logistics. Very, very, very important in the winter. Places are so much less accessible in the winter, especially Alaska. We went to Alaska in January, and that's a lot different than going in July. Most of the roads in July are open, and you can utilize them as much as you need. But basically, if you go to Alaska in the winter, you're count on hiring a bush pilot to go to the grocery store. I mean, it is absolutely insane how inaccessible most of that state is in the winter time. So we have to look ahead and figure out, hey, I'd love to shoot the Denali range, but it's not really accessible by car. So do we need to hire a plane, or should we go shoot the Talkeetna range, which is a lot more accessible by car? You have to know the logistics of travel before you travel. And it's not just like, oh, how much is a plane ticket going to cost? It's like, no, are you going to be able to get down this road to photograph this mountain once you get there? Or are you going to have to snowshoe 8 miles to get to it? So knowing that in advance is so, so important. And then scouting out the location ahead of time. So on a normal basis, I will usually get to a spot. If it's sunset, I'll normally get to a spot 3 to 4 hours in advance of that sunset. So I can scout out the location. I want to find a subject. I want to check out perspectives, angles. What's the light going to look like from here? And then, but in the winter, it's even more in depth than that. Sometimes you have to go scout out a place a day in advance because you don't know if that road's going to be 4 feet of snow, and you're going to have to, like I said, snowshoe 8 miles. You don't know if there's going to be ice everywhere. You don't know if this location even looks good in the winter sometimes. So always being able to scout out your location ahead of time will give you an edge. And you can even scout it out to the point where you're like, I want to shoot this spot at golden hour. And then 40 minutes later, I want to shoot 200 yards over this way for blue hour. And that way you diversify your portfolio literally just on one shoot. You're giving yourself so many more frames to work with. And Michelle, next. Oh, nice. All right. So I put together here a little short list of things I highly recommend having outside of your normal camera equipment. Okay. So this is not a complete list. I'm sure there are things that I didn't think about, but these are actual necessities that you need to have. Obviously, warm clothing, headwear. I can't stress enough the word layer. You need to layer, layer, layer. You can always take layers off if you're too hot, but if you get out and you go on this hike and you're cold and you start out cold, you're going to be miserable. Insulated boots and waterproof boots, got to have them. Waterproof pants. On the very first slide, you saw that I was hiking in snow that was about up to my knees. When I went 10 feet above where I was in snow up to my waist. So if I didn't have waterproof pants on there, I have a 2-hour drive back to Anchorage, Alaska. And I, at that point, could get hypothermia and things can get really, really nasty fast. So you have to have waterproof pants if you're going to be anywhere near snow. And gloves and hand warmers. We were just addressing some of this in the comments for sure. So first off, I hate using gloves when I'm in the field. It slows me down. They're less efficient, but I need them. So normally what I'll do is I'll have a glove on my left hand, and in my right hand jacket pocket, I'll have an electric hand warmer. And I think it's a Zippo hand warmer. It's like you just charge it and it lasts like a couple hours. And so I'll have a glove on my left hand that I'm not really utilizing for camera or anything. And then my right hand, I will use to periodically change settings, click the shutter, whatever. And then I'm putting right back in my pocket to keep my hands warm, because hands are literally the first thing to go when you get cold. You will have no blood in your hands after being in negative 30-degree weather in less than 10 minutes. It's bad. So always take care of your hands. And snowshoes and crampons, I'll kind of put together. Snowshoes are very important. I'm going to Oregon in January, and I'm doing a couple of trails that I've already done before. They're pretty short trails, but I know that they'll have 1 to 2 feet of snow on them likely by the time I get there. So I'll be taking some snowshoes with me, because even 1 foot of snow is miserable to hike in. And hiking is it can already be tough. And the last thing you want is to make it harder on yourself. So make it easier by taking snowshoes. Snowshoes are also great because they have spikes on the bottom usually. So if you happen to get below the snow and there's some ice there, you're not going to automatically slip. They'll catch. You'll be good. Crampons. So if you look to the image on the very right of your screen, you will see what happens if you don't use crampons when you need to. You'll see a photo in a couple of slides of we're in this little cove and there's a little sea stack in front of us, and I'm trying to photograph the water. So what happened was we came down this hillside in about 4 feet of snow. So we're snowshoeing down this steep hillside. We get to the bottom and I'm like, well, I'm at the bottom. I don't need these snowshoes anymore. And I take them off, and literally the first step I took, I go completely airborne. What I didn't know that it was sort of a beach that, it doesn't have sand. They have larger rocks about this big, thousands of them. And each rock was covered with about 2 inches thick of ice. And so the first step I took, I go airborne and my hip lands directly on one of these rocks. So just, word of precaution, you have to be prepared for everything. Because if I didn't have friends there with me, if I didn't have service in that alcove, I know that. Luckily, my muscle kind of acted as a bit of a buffer between the bone and the rock. Otherwise, I would have broken my hip because I still have muscle damage right there. Luckily, that worked out for me. I had an SOS device with me just in case. I had all the things prepared in case something like that did happen. But not everyone has that, because it was one level of injury below being rescued away in a boat. So yes, crampons, you need crampons. If you don't know what crampons are, they're these little spikes that you put on your boots that stick into the ice so you don't slip. And then SOS device, just mentioned this. I use something called Somewhere device. An SOS device is an absolute, I don't think there's any room for error here. It's an actual necessity if you ever plan on doing any sort of hiking or anything alone. You need some sort of backup plan. So SOS devices that will allow you to press an SOS button via satellite to where you don't need cell phone service. And the one I use allows me to text via satellite. So winter is one of those things where you can't take chances. Especially when you're shooting in Alaska, sometimes there's no room for error here. You have to take these precautions. Headlamp. I have had one instance where I was like, oh, I'll be done shooting before sunset. Wasn't done before sunset. And luckily I had enough phone battery to get me down the mountain with the phone light. But I have a headlamp in my carry-on in my backpack. Like, I have a headlamp everywhere after that experience. Always bring a headlamp. And then this one may seem obvious, but I seem to run into a lot of hikers that don't bring water or snacks. We will be, when we were shooting Firefall, we were on that hillside for about 6 hours. Winter is miserable enough to shoot in. Don't let yourself get hungry, and don't let yourself get dehydrated. Just don't. Bring water and snacks. Next, please. Okay, on location. So let me make sure I have my notes right on this one since I can't see. All right. When I get to a location, this is kind of just a process of, once I get out there, have my camera, have my gear, I'm in the field. What do I do now? First thing I want to do is I want to find the subject. And the subject can be anything. It can be a tree, it can be a mountain, it can be a sand dune, or it can be something I put there like a person or a helicopter. A subject is huge. Once you get your subject, you can kind of work around that, and you can find what sort of angle and perspective you want. And you want to find an angle or perspective that's going to really emphasize your subject, because, there's a reason that you pick that to be your subject. And it's because it's for the same reason that you want the viewer to go, oh, wow. Like, it's the first thing in the photo you want people to see. So in the photo, most people, like in one of these photos, the first thing you see on the left, the subject is the glacier. The first thing you see on the right is probably going to be the helicopter. And that's why I did that. And so once you get your angles and perspectives, you want to find the right focal length. And when it comes to focal length, and if you don't know about focal length, it's basically the amount of zoom that you have in. So there's like 18 millimeter, 200 millimeters, much more cropped in. Focal length, I don't think there's any perfect focal length. I think it's based on what that you want as a photographer. It's based on your eye, your preference. And so if you look on the left-hand side photo, that's probably like 50 millimeter. That's a more compressed photo. I am a landscape photographer that loves compressing images. I am a landscape photographer that you'll probably see use telephoto lenses more than any other landscape photographer, because I love showing compression. I love a background just looking massive and having a human below it and looking tiny. So I compress the image on the left. That's a different focal length. Whereas if you're a lot of landscape photographers, most probably are like, well, let's go with the wider lens here. Let's go with for an Olympus, it would be an 8mm. Let's go with an 8mm here. Let's get in this helicopter and let's tell the story of what it's like to fly a helicopter, probably at one point 20 feet over a glacier, going 80 miles an hour. Let's tell that story. So it's two totally different things. And this is using the same lens. I'm using a 7 to 14mm here. One cropped in, and the one on the right is just, the subject is more of the helicopter. The subject on that one really isn't a glacier or a mountain. It's more of like a human interaction with the environment. So having a subject is, it's diverse. Finding the right focal length is diverse. It's totally up to you. There's no right or wrong answer when it comes to a focal length. And then after I find my focal length or what I prefer in that, I'm not used to talking this much, guys. Sorry. Once I find the right focal length, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look at my settings and say, hey, should I put a polarizer on this? If I've got some clouds mixed in with some blue sky, I'm going to throw on a polarizer. Or if I have some, if I'm down low and I'm getting a shot of like a stream with a long exposure, I'm going to throw on a polarizer and get some more of that right there. Or I'm going to throw on an ND filter. Do I have some harsh light over here and then some darker shadows on the right side? Polarizers are usually, like I said, I use them on 99% of my shots. They allow you to manipulate the light before even shooting. It's like post-processing before you even shoot. They're amazing. I cannot recommend polarizers and ND filters more. And then I'll say this out randomly, they're not on here, but graduated NDs where you have the top of the filter is darker and the bottom of it's lighter. So with landscape photography, a lot of times if you're shooting sunset, if you're shooting a mountain sunset, you're going to have some alpenglow and it may be really harsh up the top of your frame, and the bottom of your frame is like, it's really dark and you're not really getting it even out. Using a graduated ND filter, kind of even that out, even the contrast out before you even process that image. Highly recommend. And then the last thing I'll do is I'll look at a subject or a landscape and really determine if I need to add something else as far as contrast or color contrast goes. Like if I'm photographing a glacier and it's a pretty blank blue scene, the sky above it's blue, the snow below it's white, there's not a lot of color contrast there. Let's add my buddy Nathan. Let's have him put a red jacket on and have him go up there and just have a little color pop. And I'll get into more of that on one of the slides later on. She doesn't even need me to tell her now. Perfect. So I'm just going to give you guys a little inside tips and tricks on how I frame, how I, go about when I'm out in the field, what I usually do once I get there, So tips and tricks. Let's go ahead and perfect. Utilizing movement of water. So if you remember me talking about falling on my hip, this is exactly where it happened. You can kind of see some of the bigger rocks right here, but it's mostly smaller pebbles. If I were to take that frame and go 10 feet to the left, it would all be rocks about the medium-sized rock you see in front of you. And that's what I fell on. It was 2 inches thick of ice, but that was on me. So water in the frame. I am known for, I don't like having a fast shutter speed when I'm photographing water. I love showing the movement of water. And so if I open up my shutter and I allow the camera to kind of process the water movement, you can see right here, it's almost as if it's like your eyes are kind of playing tricks on you. It kind of looks like it's moving. It's kind of not, it's kind of blurred. I love doing that with both water surface that's below you in your foreground, and I love doing it with waterfalls. One of my favorite things to do is putting a human in front of a waterfall and using and then opening up my shutter and having the blurred waterfall, like showing the movement of waterfall. But Olympus image stabilization inside the Olympus bodies and lenses allows me to handheld do that keeping I kind of go back and forth on what's the subject, the human or the waterfall. But anyway, it keeps the human stable. And then the waterfall, yeah, I have tons of photos like this. But yeah, I love being able to do that. I think that it can add, a value to each photo that you put, and it kind of draws a person in. So what I wanted to do, I'll talk about this particular photo. I was using live composite mode for the first time, which absolutely blew my mind. Basically, I'm being able to, in the screen, I can see the movement of the water, like the blurred movement of the water before I even click the shutter button. So I'm able to kind of get my settings right. So usually if you're doing like a long exposure shot, you need to set some settings, click the shutter, see how it turned out, move on. And if it's too bright, you bring your shutter up or you bring your aperture up. Live composite mode lets me look at everything right then and there. So I have all my settings on the first shutter click. So highly recommend using that. Now, when shooting water, just in general, not even in the winter, I like getting a nice low angle to where the water, it feels like it's coming at the person. And then I'll use a fisheye lens too sometimes. I did it here because it kind of, with the trees on the sides, on the sides, it was a very small cove. I liked being able to give the effect that the image had like a peripheral vision. So my goal with this image was to make the viewer feel immersed in the photo. Like they were the ones looking at this scenery right here. It wasn't a photograph. It was them looking at it. So that was kind of my goal here, was to make the water come toward the person. Let's get some weird kind of like warped angle here to where it looks like peripheral vision, and go from there. And I think that adding little elements like that will up your photography game so much. Being able to make a human feel immersed in a photo is totally different than them just scrolling through and looking at different photos. Let me make sure it's hard to tell which slide I'm on. So I'm trying to make sure. Yeah. So basically I just wanted to make this photo look like a point of view. And I think that's how it turned out. Don't even have to tell her. All right. Let's talk about leading lines. Finding a good line or making one. Leading lines are a really good way to lead your viewer to your subject, or leading them to the heart of the photo. So like if you look at the one on the left, I'm leading with there's a rope and the snow covered bankment right there, literally leads you to the subject, which is a lighthouse / fisherman right below it. And then on the right side, you have a mountain, and this is actually a self-portrait on a tripod. I have my own footsteps leading up to me and the mountain. So let's talk about this a little bit. Leading lines can be both obvious, which I would say the one on the left, the lighthouse image, those are very obvious leading lines. And then, a little more obscure and kind of like, what? The one on the right is something, it's not as obvious. When I first look at that image, I don't go directly to the leading lines. It's not, I'm already at the guy in the blue shirt. The color pop is what drew me to that. Whereas the one on the left, I start out and I kind of look down and look up toward the lighthouse itself. It literally led me to the main subject of the photo. So, and there are different types of leading lines. These are basically kind of the same ones. But you can consider a drone shot being shot straight down on a straight road. That's a leading line in a sense that usually if you have a car, the car is probably the subject. The leading line is just kind of like a blank slate for it to be on. And then on each side of that road, you can have buildings, you can have snow-covered trees, anything. So yes, leading lines. Let me look. But the most important thing to figure out about leading lines, before you can find a leading line, you have to have a subject. You have to have a subject to where it's called a leading line. It's got to lead you to something. Find a subject, walk around, look at different perspectives, look at different angles, find a good, crack in the ice, water flowing to you or away from you. Leading lines, they're all over my Instagram page, all over my website and portfolio. I love being able to lead someone to a subject. All right. So if you know anything about my work, photography, if you follow me on Instagram, you know that I love color. I don't hide the color that I capture. I definitely don't desaturate my photos in any way. If anything, I up the saturation. I love utilizing colors that, our planet is giving me. And I'm just there to kind of like, whoa. I like being able to like utilize that to make my photo have better contrast and sort of pop out at the viewer. So winter, there's a lot of snow, a lot of clouds. There's not a lot of color in winter landscape photography. So it's okay to add that color yourself, whether you're doing an air-to-air shoot. So the photo on the left, we're shooting from a plane at a plane over the Denali Range. And our goal here was like, well, we need a plane. We want to photograph this range, but we want to add a human element to it to give us, some sort of one scale. So what we did was, let's get a plane. Well, you don't want to get a gray plane. You don't want to get a white plane. You got to get something that pops. Let's get a yellow plane or a red plane. So we found 2 red planes, and that's what we photographed. And if you can look at that photo and imagine what it would be like without a red plane in it, it's not the same photo. It's one, it tells no story. And 2, it's kind of like, you just scroll right by it for like, whoa, red plane. That kind of, it draws the viewer to that photo. And it also I love giving people a sense of like what it would be like to be there. And I'll talk about that later. And before I go to this next photo, some quick tips for if you ever get the chance to do an air-to-air shoot. Use a versatile lens. I was using mostly my 40 to 150 millimeter 2.8. This allowed me to get the edge of our own plane wing and reach their wing. You really want something that gives you a lot of different focal lengths. The most diverse lens you have, use it. And then keep your shutter speed above 1,000th of a second. This is the most important piece of information. If you can get a good look at that photo, you can kind of see that the propeller's a little blurred, and even the bottom feet of it are a little blurred. This was taken around a 1,000th of a second, and it was the minimum I could shoot this at. So what's happening is I'm shooting this plane, which is probably half a mile away. I'm in a moving plane myself. He's moving, I'm moving, and we're a half a mile away. So any little movement that happens on this shoot is it's going to cause some sort of blur unless you have some sort of, I recommend 1,000th of a second, but 2,000 to 2,500th of a second is exactly, you'd probably be fine, because you want to make sure that you get that nice crispness to it. You don't really want to blur there. The propeller's fine, but you don't want to blur the wings. You don't want to blur the tail. So when you're photographing that far away and you're both moving, every single piece of movement comes up in that photo. So moving to, if you're not able to do like an air-to-air shoot, it doesn't matter. You can find that color pop somewhere else. So we were just driving down this road and we saw these amazing sets of cabins that I don't believe they're in use right now. And I'm like, let's go photograph that, because they're completely surrounded by this white, it's this super minimalist kind of setting that's going on right now. Let's stop and go shoot that. So even being able to go outside, and if you get some big snowfall in your backyard, go outside and shoot the back of your house. Go outside and shoot the shed in the backyard. I mean, there's no limit to what you can photograph, as long as you know the little technicalities that you need, bringing out the color pop, stuff like that. So yeah, being able to shoot this cabin was awesome. It was a tale of two little worlds here. We're having this massive production shoot where we're getting these 2 planes up above the Denali Range. And then this other one, we're just pulling over on the side of the road. And it's like, dude, look at that ski cabin right there. Let's go shoot that thing. And I do like the plane photo more, but it's a close call. All right. My favorite thing about photography, let me make sure I'm on the right one here, is giving a sense of scale. And this is the one reason why I say I am a landscape and adventure photographer, and not just a landscape, because landscape photography, if you don't add that human element, you don't get that same sense of scale. So I want to be able to go photograph these just jaw-dropping spots. I mean, the photo without Nathan right here would have been sweet. But the fact that a human is in it and I'm able to kind of show the viewer, hey, this is what it would be like if you were there right now. That's amazing. Because if I didn't have Nathan there That tree can be 6 feet tall, it can be 10 feet tall, but in reality, that tree is like 25 feet tall. It's huge. So being able to put Nathan there, I'm going to have him shine a light at it, just give a little more color contrast there, a little more light. And then I'm going to have him put on a red jacket to give that color pop I was just talking about, because everything else in the frame is really blue. Let's put a red jacket there. And then bam, you have this new image that kind of offers this human element that allows the viewer, again, to immerse themselves in the photo or give them some sort of sense of an idea what it would be like to be there. Because my entire goal in photography is, when I first started, I was like, wow, these are really cool to photograph and it's awesome that I'm getting to do this, but not everyone is going to get to do this. So what can I do to make everyone get an idea of what it would be like to be there? And the best thing I can do is put a human in it and give them some sort of scale or give them some sort of point of view that'll show them what it would be like to be there. So that was my goal with this photo. We passed this is the Glen Allen Highway again. We passed these things dozens of times throughout the week. And I'm like, dude, these bent over trees, we got to shoot them at blue hour and we got to put a person under it. We got to do it. So, yeah. My entire goal is just basically, no, you're fine, Michelle. Thank you. My entire goal with photography is to go photograph these places. And then when I come back, go on another trip by editing these photos and take my audience with me so they can have an idea of what it's like to be here. All right. So I'm going to do a quick little guide on photographing the Northern Lights. Obviously, winter photography isn't winter photography if you don't somehow mention the Northern Lights. I've had the pleasure, if I were to really get into it, this would be an entire presentation in itself. So I'm going to do my best to keep it short and sweet. A quick guide to the Northern Lights. I've photographed the Northern Lights twice now. I've done it in Iceland in 2019 and Alaska in January of 2021. So a little bit about the Northern Lights. They happen in the Northern Hemisphere. They are the Aurora Borealis, and then the Aurora, someone in the comments correct me, it's the Aurora Borealis, happens in the Southern Hemisphere. Totally different thing, not seen nearly as much as the Northern Lights. So they're most likely seen in winter. So when you get into the really upper parts of the Northern Hemisphere, you have these shorter days and longer nights in the winter. That is the main reason why Northern Lights are seen so much more in the winter. When you go to places like Iceland, you have Aurora Australis. Thank you, Australis. I'm sure I'm butchering it. Yeah, I was very close. Joe Long, thank you. The Aurora Australis is the Southern Hemisphere aurora. So, and the ADHD kicks in, and I'm trying to figure out where I was. So, when you go to these places like Iceland, and they have these in the summertime, they have these 18-hour days where you get the midnight sun and you literally get no darkness at all. But you get to the winter and you get these 18 or so hour nights, and you get 18 hours more than you have in the summer of getting to chase Northern Lights. There's so much more opportunity because there's more darkness in the winter. And epicenters for the Northern Lights are places like Fairbanks. We got a Fairbanks guy here. I'm sure he's having a blast right now. He probably sees Northern Lights right now. Norway, Northern California, or Northern Canada, not Northern California, Iceland, Siberia, there's a lot of epicenters to where you can go. Fairbanks is supposed to be just out of this world amazing for the Northern Lights. I haven't been yet. I wanted to go this year, but I won't have time. So a little bit about photographing the Northern Lights. Tripod necessity. One of the things that I saw last year, someone was photographing Northern Lights, and I believe it was with an Olympus camera, and they did it handheld, and it was mesmerizing because it was so impressive because it was handheld. But it's really hard to do that. So bring a tripod. It's a necessity, I promise. Use a wide angle lens. So when you're shooting a foreground, but you want to get as much sky as possible, because the aurora is cool, but you want to give some sort of like perspective on like where you're shooting it, whether you're shooting it like you went with a bunch of cabins and mountains below or something like that, or a road. So you want to have a wide enough lens to be able to capture a foreground, and then well, here's a better way to explain it. In the top right-hand picture right there, you can see the auroras on the horizon. That's like a KP index of 5. If I were in Fairbanks on that same night, that exact aurora would be flying over my head. I'm just too far south for that aurora. So if you have a wide angle, you're able to capture the foreground and the aurora blasting over your head. So you want a nice wide angle lens. And then you also want something with a pretty low aperture. I'd say nothing higher than like a flat 4. You just want to be able to utilize as much light as you can. Though it kind of goes against most of the rules of landscape photography and kind of, narrowing your depth of field. You're going to have to utilize, because you're shooting at night and you really want to keep your ISO at a minimum level. So being able to shoot at like an f4 or lower, a flat 2, even if you have a wide angle prime, like at an f1.2, you're sitting pretty. So you want to keep your ISO. You're going to have to use your ISO at some point, unless you're just getting some sort of out of this world KP index of 9. And let me explain the KP index, because I didn't put that on here. The KP index is basically the solar energy reaching from the sun to here. That's what creates the northern lights. And the KP goes from 1 to 9. 9 being an absolute bombshell of aurora. Like it's what you want. And you really can't even pick anything up above or below a KP3. So now that you have that, you want to keep your ISO probably between 3,000 and 7,000. You definitely don't want to go over 10,000. It's the same rules that apply to photographing the Milky Way. The higher you go in ISO, the more noise you're going to get. And then same thing with shooting like the Milky Way. I keep a cooler white balance. I highly recommend it. White balance is basically the temperature of your photo between cool and warm. 3,500 is pretty cool for landscape photography. This will allow you to have a naturally blue night sky, blue foreground, and then your aurora is going to be at probably its most natural color. Once you get above like 4,500 and get into the 6,000, stuff like that, you're going to have a brown sky. It's going to turn everything brown. You don't want it. 3,500 is a really good starting point. Focus on a specific star or a distant object in the foreground. So Olympus has its starry night autofocus you can use. I usually latch on to like the biggest star I can find, but that's not always possible. So sometimes if you're going to focus on something on land, you need to focus on it far away, because remember, we have a lower aperture. So if I were to focus on something right next to me, like a person, it's going to blur everything behind them. It's going to make the aurora very blurry. So we want to focus. If you look in that top right-hand corner, the image up there, if I'm focusing on those trees way back in the background, I'm going to be really solid. I'm going to be solid. Okay. So the reason I haven't talked about shutter speed is because the aurora themselves, they don't always move at the same speed. So the first time I saw the aurora, they were pretty similar to the image on the top right-hand corner, moving super slowly. I can do a 20-second shutter speed, and it's not gonna do like hurt my image. But if it's moving, sometimes the aurora can move fast. It's literally ribboning across the sky. And if it's going that fast and you do a 20-second shutter, you're just gonna have a green sky. You're not going to get any of these aurora lines or anything. So I didn't want to tell you a specific shutter speed to go with, because it's going to depend on how fast the aurora is moving if you get the chance to shoot them. And then if you do, or when you do photograph it, obviously use a remote shutter or do a time shutter. When you have an open shutter, like 2 seconds or more, you don't want to get any of the vibration of the camera moving. You want to be able to keep everything as stable as possible. And then if you're going to do a composite photo is like a composite photo of stacking two different photos. The top right-hand image is one single image. The one on the bottom left is a composite of 2 different photos taken at the same place, a couple hours apart. If you do a composite photo like this, I recommend shooting the foreground around blue hour. This is the hour just after sunset. It still allows you some light to work with. It still allows you to bring out your color, your contrast of the mountains behind it, without having to sacrifice too much light. And then a couple hours later, photograph the aurora in the same spot. And that's how I recommend doing a composite photo there. All right. So final thought. I just wanted to finish up by thanking everyone before you get in the Q&A. Thank you, Olympus, for everyone. Thank you, Olympus, for having me on here. It's an absolute honor. I just wanted to say one of the most common questions I get asked as a landscape photographer is like, I don't have access to this. I don't have the resources to be able to travel like you do. And travel is financially, exhausting. And an easy way to address that is, it's not all about going to these places to be able to do this. Go into your backyard, go to a nearby park. I meet so many people who are like right next to an amazing state park and they can go practice and learn this craft out there. I mean, like I said earlier, you can go into a backyard, photograph a red shed after 2 feet of snow falls. I mean, there's so much you can do at home to make yourself a better landscape photographer and become an amazing photographer. You do not have to go to Alaska or Norway or Iceland to be a great landscape photographer. I'm able to do that, but that's not what makes me a great landscape photographer. Everything is right outside your door. It's all around us. You just have to look. It's all here. So that being said, please, everyone, I hope you were able to learn something from this. Go create something amazing.
I'm back.
What's up?
Thank you, Tyler. That was amazing.
Oh, thank you.
I know. I'm gonna let Tyler get a drink of water because I do these classes all the time, and I know how bad it hurts to talk for an hour straight to nobody but your computer screen. So. Yeah. Rest that voice for just a sec. I understand completely.
Yeah, I'm definitely not used to talking this long for sure.
So if you have questions, go ahead and add them into the Q&A. I'm going to start going through some of the questions now. Again, I just want to thank Tyler. I love that endpoint. I wish that I could find snow close by my house, but
me too. I mean, Kentucky, we get a couple inches throughout the year, but some years we get none. I do wish we got more snow because if it's going to be cold, at least give me snow,
Right. Yeah, no, it just gets cold here. I think historically we've never had snow ever, but I live pretty close to Tahoe, so I can go to, Lake Tahoe and see snow if I need to get it fixed. It just takes a couple hours.
Oh yeah. Or you just go to Oregon. Yeah. You're not too far.
Yeah, exactly. But I don't live near beautiful nature, unfortunately. I live in a lot of farmland. All right. So we had a couple of questions that came through earlier that I just wanted to hit on because you did talk a lot about polarizers and all of your filters. And people are asking, do you use square filters or what type of filters do you use?
Okay. So I use Polar Pro is a brand I use. I'm not really a brands guy. There's probably not too many bad filters out there. I have a set of circular filters, ND and polarizers, but I also use square filters as well. I have a mounting system from Polar Pro that allows me to use square filters as well. Circular filters are amazing because I'm a landscape photographer. I'm doing like these 10-mile hikes, so I really don't always want to carry an entire system. And circular filters are just, they're this skinny in the circumference of your lens. So they're tiny. They're super lightweight. And they're a lot more affordable than the square filter system. So I recommend if you're wanting to get into filters, check out the circular ones first because they're minimalist. They're much more affordable and you can kind of figure out if that's kind of your style.
Nice. Great tip. Do you ever use the live ND filter that's built into the EM1 Mark III? Oh, and the EM1X actually.
Yes. If I'm shooting like a waterfall on a bright day, that is usually when I'm using a live ND filter because I don't always like using ND filters. It's much easier, of course, when your camera offers the technology. So, yeah.
It makes for packing less stuff with you too, right?
Yeah, exactly. If you're able to, if you're doing these 10 or 15 mile hikes and you're like, oh, my camera has this technology, so. Yeah.
All right. Also, now I'm getting to the chunk about the Aurora. Thank you as always. Our comment section is the best comment section because whenever we need help and somebody needs to give us some feedback, you guys always jump in. There's always a subject expert out there somewhere. And I just love that you guys are such a great and engaging community. It's awesome. There was a bunch of people that answered that. Joe just happened to be the first one. So you win, Joe, for being the first.
What did they answer?
I'm not gonna say
yeah. No, you're good. Yeah. Well, I'm planning on looking through the comment section after because I know there's a crap ton I can still learn. So
Yeah.
I'm excited to go through them later on.
Yeah. Somebody also asked you mostly shoot vertical images. And I was looking through your Instagram this week, and I think you do.
Yeah, I do that because I got my start on Instagram. So I've kind of aligned myself with, I mean, when I post on Instagram, I look at performance analytics and what performs better. So vertical images do perform better, but if you look at my website, you'll see more horizontal images. Normally what I do is I shoot horizontal no matter what, and then I'll crop in for the Instagram. But for like prints or anything like that, and I take that back a little bit. In my first 2 years of photography, I kind of adhered to what does Instagram demand me to do? They demand vertical, but I'm like, I don't want vertical prints in my house. I want some horizontal prints. So I started about 2 years ago, more focusing on horizontal, and then when it goes on Instagram, I'll crop in and do it there.
I did not know that about Instagram, but I inadvertently shoot everything vertically. So I don't, it was funny because I was like, oh, he does too. But now I'm learning you also shoot horizontally.
Well, I still have to remind myself, I'll still be here and I'm like, no, come on, you know, and it'll vary too. I mean, sometimes I'm like, the frame here is better vertical.
So Emily Talpin, one of my favorite viewers, she's always out there helping in the comment section, asks, any fun places you're excited to shoot this winter? Are you going anywhere? Where are you going this winter?
Yeah, before this, my buddy was trying to reach out to me. He's like, hey dude, we buying tickets for this? I'm like, I have something to focus on tonight. Please let me focus on it tomorrow. I'm taking a break in December.
Oh, nice.
It's been a very long, busy fall. In January, I will be heading up to the Pacific Northwest to capture. I'll be doing a lot of Oregon and maybe dip into Washington. I really haven't been there in the winter, and like the Mount Hood area and the Three Sisters area all look amazing, snow covered. I'm a huge fan of Oregon and Washington. So that's where I'll be heading in January. And I just booked tickets yesterday for my 6th trip to Iceland. This will be my 2nd winter trip. The first winter trip, we were going to focus on ice caves and the Aurora Borealis. And we happened to be there in the week that Iceland had its strongest storm in history. So we did not get to do any of that. So we're going to try and do it again this year.
I've never been to Iceland, but I've been to Mount Hood a million times. It's beautiful up there.
Oh, I love Mount Hood. It's beautiful. Yeah. I haven't been
Are you going to do Crater Lake too? You got to do Crater Lake too.
No, I haven't. Well, don't they shut down at a certain point?
Yeah. So Tito wants to know, have you used the USB power charger to power while you're out on the road? Do you just plug in your camera to your car or?
All the time.
Yeah, same.
All the time. Yeah, I mean, that's the coolest thing about Olympus cameras, because like usually when I go, I work with Outdoorsy a lot. So I'm living out of vans, random vans a lot. And I'm like, they better have a USB port. And that's how I'm charging my Olympus cameras, because it's so much more efficient than having,
carrying a battery charger.
Yeah. I mean, I'll carry a battery charger just in case, but I don't have it in my backpack because I know I'll be able to charge this via Thunderbolt.
Yeah. I love it. It's always in my car. I have a cord, cord in my glove box because I have the USB charger. And whenever I'm out, like hiking, just plug it in. Next location, plug it in. It's great.
My buddy will be out there with me, and I'm like driving in the van. I'll plug my camera up real quick, and he'll go. It is a little hint of jealousy there. I'm like, yeah. Yes, I utilize that all the time.
Dixie's just given us tips. Thank you, Dixie. She's also been on the show before. Cold can kill a battery fast. Keep them in your inside pockets. And if your battery dies, try putting it in your armpit for a few minutes and you might get a few more shots. I hope that's true. I'm going to keep all of my batteries in my armpits from now on.
It was actually funny when I first started working with Olympus. I was still transitioning from my old camera brand to this one, and I was shooting both cameras on 2 different tripods, and it was -8 degrees. We were in Mammoth, California. -8. We were in 4 feet of snow, and the other brand just the camera absolutely crapped out. And this was my first trip using the Olympus camera, and it blew me away with how well it worked in sub-0 degree temperatures, because my other camera it was done. And the batteries inside the bag died. I couldn't even put new batteries into it, it was over.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Weather sealing is nice too.
Huge.
There's questions of people asking if you trust your camera in the cold, and it's amazing how punishing you can be with an Olympus camera out in the snow and the ice. I went to Tahoe actually last year, and I tripped and fell climbing up a hill, and I rolled down the hill, and my camera was literally just completely submerged in snow, and I just dusted off the front of it, and I was like, okay, I'll continue photographing. I was photographing some birds coming out of this tree, and I wasn't paying attention where I was walking, and I tumbled down the hill like a comic book. It was amazing.
That's the thing about being a landscape photographer, is you beat the living crap out of your cameras. That's just how it goes. I mean, you know, I take great care of my gear, but there's only so much I can do if I'm set it down on lava rock. But I've never once had a problem with camera batteries going out mid-shoot. I've never had a problem with the camera acting finicky in cold weather. That's one of the reasons why I've chosen to use Olympus so much, is because I don't have time to be like, can I trust this camera when I'm going to Alaska and sub in negative 30-degree temperatures? I can't do that. It's my job.
Yeah, and you don't want to risk it. I totally get
exactly.
that. So guys, thanks for all your comments and questions. I'm going to let Tyler go because he has spoken so much tonight. Like I said, definitely check us out this month. All of December, we're going to be doing more content on winter wildlife, winter birding, holiday bokeh, Christmas tree light painting. We're going to have stuff going all month long for the countdown to Christmas with our partners over in the UK, or not our partners, our counterparts in the UK and Europe. So it's going to be awesome. And yes, this is recorded. Again, you can replay it. You can see me have a panic attack over and over again, right? Nothing like live television.
Can I say one more thing? Yeah. Just because if your question wasn't asked in the comments, head over to my Instagram. You don't even have to follow me. Send me a DM if you have any questions. I'm usually pretty good about getting back. Feel free to send me any questions you have. Like I said in the beginning, I love talking about this. I love giving out information. I love hearing information. Yeah.
And his work is really, really beautiful.
Thank you.
Your landscape work is gorgeous. All right. So thank you, everybody. And thank you, Tyler. Thank you for coming on the show tonight. I know it was a wild night, but it was great. And we got through it. And I learned a lot of tips, especially about the Northern Lights, that I definitely didn't know. So thank you guys so much for joining us. And thank you, comment section, for doing the amazing thing of engaging with each other and building our community and keeping our Olympus OM system community strong. We can't do it without you, and we're so happy to have you. Thank you, everyone.
See you guys.